Any questions for our speakers, please use the QR code or the link below.
Okay. All right, Ate Fatima.
So welcome to Intra-pahina, a Bangkulala policy forum on the impacts of technology on the publishing industry. This forum is co-presented by the UPDAP Cultural Committee.
And before we begin, may we remind everyone to follow the house rules for this webinar. So kindly keep your microphones muted unless you're asked to speak to avoid any interruptions. Feel free to use the chat box for your questions and comments, and you may also opt to send a private message to the team to ask your questions. We'll address them during the Q&A segment, but please be mindful of your language and ensure that your comments and questions are respectful and relevant to the topic at hand. The content presented during this seminar is the intellectual property of the respective speakers and organizers, and we kindly request that you refrain from recording, reproducing, or sharing any part of this webinar without explicit permission. So these reminders will help us maintain focus and provide a meaningful experience for everyone.
Ayan. So I think we can start na. So first of all, a pleasant afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing great today. So welcome to our forum session titled Intra-pahina, a Bangkulala Policy Forum on the Impacts of Technology on the Publishing Industry. Today, we are about to tackle some of the biggest questions in the publishing world. But before that, let us first introduce ourselves. So I am Fatima Marshall.
And I am Angelo Calderon, and we will be your hosts for today's session. Okay, so since na-mention mo na, partner, tungkol saan nga ba yung forum natin for today?
So ito na nga, partner. Today we are going to explore some of the most important questions sa status and internal workings ng publishing industry sa Pilipinas, such as questions na how do publishing houses source their products? How does technology bring forth new forms of storytelling? And how has social media influenced the marketing and visibility of new authors?
Right, partner. And para matulungan tayong manavigate yung mga questions na to, we've invited the speaker, two speakers. So one is an expert in this field, and another is also an expert in this field. Okay, so they'll be sharing their experiences, insights, and practical tips to help us learn about the creative and structural challenges faced by authors and new entrants in the publishing industry. So highlighting how publishing houses source their content and examining the impact of social media and online sales on marketing. So now that our attendees are informed about the topics of this forum, let's not keep them waiting any longer, partners. So let's call on our very supportive instructor, Mr. Remy De Leon, to give us his opening remarks. Hello, Sir Remy.
Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Intra-pahina, Bangkulala Science and Technology Policy Forum at UP Clark. It's actually the fourth in this particular series of Fora for this particular semester. We've already heard from the group that talked about the policy impacts of the Chico River Dam project from the 70s. We've also heard from the group that talked about the way that we care for animals on campus. And yesterday, we also heard from the group that talked about the science discourse in the various theological seminaries within the Catholic Church in the Philippines. So each of these has been exploration of the way science influences a specific portion of our society and how it has in the process of in itself changing introduced change to the way we live our lives and to the way we think. Perhaps there's no area where this connection is more explicit actually than what we're going to discuss today, which is we're going to talk about the impact that technology has had on the way that we publish and by implication, the way that we read and the way that we um, write, and by extension, also the way that we experience the world. Um, I could give you a few words about how the entire experience of reading and the entire experience of publishing has been rapidly changing in the last few years, but tell the truth, if I try to do that, I will be aging myself, because that was true when I was in college, when the core technologies that were going to that introduced this new period in the way that we read were brought in: the internet, electronic books, um, audiobooks. These were all relatively new when I was young, but I am actually, despite appearances, I hope, no longer young. Uh, and the technologies have begun to mature. And as a result, perhaps the thing that we have to correct now is the impression that as a result of these technologies, people are reading less. You will find out actually that people are reading more, and in fact reading more in print format. I believe, if we're looking at the statistics, largely because of people discovering things that they love in the other formats, and then finding themselves moving on to the print format. Uh, the market is beginning to mature, is what I'm trying to say, and the way that the technologies have been applied have resulted in some more mature strategies for using them to reach out to the market, more mature strategies for reaching out to the stakeholders that you wish to influence, if you're looking at it from a different point of view. And not enough people are talking about that. And that's something that we want to look at in order to better understand how this particular aspect of technology is changing our lives. And of course, I am very glad to have two very special people today speaking. They were discovered and invited by our the students who are organizing this, and they also happen to be people that I have been around for quite some time now, because everyone in the Philippines who gets really engaged in the reading experience at some point encounters the names of Hani de Peralta and of Mina Esguerra. I'm really excited to hear what they have to say, because of the level of insight that I know they will bring to our examination of the way technology has changed the publishing experience in the Philippines. Which is probably my sign to shut up, because I want to hear from them. Thank you very much for agreeing to be our speakers. Thank you very much to everyone who is here and listening to us. I think actually the students were asked to ask for permission, because this goes on our archive on YouTube. So I'm hoping that a whole bunch of other people are going to discover this on the Bangkulálâ YouTube archive, or at least the next batch of students are going to discover it, and maybe create a new batch of knowledge based on it. Okay, so yeah, that's it. Thank you very much. Um, Eager to hear from our speakers.
All right. So thank you so much for those wonderful words, Prof. Remy.
All right, everyone. The moment we have been waiting for is finally here. It is our absolute pleasure to introduce our first guest speaker.
Okay, our first guest speaker is the sales manager for Penguin Random House US, overseeing international sales in the Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Myanmar. Before entering publishing, she was a high school English teacher at Ateneo de Manila. She began her publishing journey as an editor and content development specialist for digital apps at Vival. She has held key roles in the industry, including leading Flipside Publishing, and an ebook company that helped local publishers distribute their works on major platforms, and servicing as the general manager of Rex Bookstore's digital arm.
A passionate advocate for Filipino readers and authors, she co-founded the Filipino Readers' Choice Awards in 2012 and was the founder and core committee head of the Filipino ReaderCon, a reader-focused event that ran from 2011 to 2017. So she also served as a board member of the Book Development Association of the Philippines. She has been with Penguin Random House US since 2016, contributing significantly to the global reach of Filipino literature. So today, we are privileged to hear from her as she shares her insights and experiences in helping us understand the publishing processes and market demands. So let us give a virtual round of applause for Mix Honey de Peralta. Good afternoon po.
Afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thank you so much. Hello to Ram. Hello to Bangkulálâ, the students, everyone organizing this. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for your very generous introduction, which I feel might not entirely be deserved, but I'll try to do what I can. I will be sharing my presentation, which is not that yet. I will try to cover everything in this presentation within the next 30 minutes. Please let me know if I have 5 minutes left. I do tend to talk long, very chatty, so please warn me about the time. I was told that this was sort of like an introduction to publishing. The topic that was given me, the title was Exploring the Path to Publication and Beyond. Although, as I understand it, you also wanted to look into the impact of technology on publishing. Let me just say right out that although publishing is actually a very, very slow industry, one of the slowest, I think, in terms of processes. Technology has impacted, like, every aspect of publishing. But I guess before we or maybe a process of discussing the technology, I wanted to go through first the actual structure or types of publishing. I gather that not a lot of people in the audience are actually familiar with the processes, if that's correct. If you are, then great. You probably know a lot of this, but I think I wanted to start from the beginning. So when people talk about publishing, there are actually different types and there are different paths to publishing. And there are different models. So what you see here, when I say types of publishing, these are generally the publishing models that you might come face to face with. And sometimes people will talk about one certain type of publishing and then make that applicable to all types when that's usually not the case. These three are different models. Some of them might overlap, but generally these are the three tracks, I guess, that you can follow if you do intend to publish or put up your own publishing house. So first, the one that you're familiar with, I guess the most is traditional publishing. The model of traditional publishing is when the author or money flows to the author. What does that mean? This is a typical process where you have a manuscript, you submit it to a publisher or an agent submits it to a publisher and the publisher acquires it. You spend no money because you're not supposed to spend any money in traditional publishing. I don't know if you want, like, some people have spent money to have it edited beforehand before it's submitted to an author, but that's entirely optional. The basic process is when a publisher is interested in your book, they acquire it. They might, hopefully, they pay you in advance. They will definitely pay you the royalties, and they spend for everything, meaning the printing, the marketing, the distribution. If they are selling it themselves, they will ship it. So all of the risk is on the publisher. They will spend for everything in the hopes that they come out with the best product, which is your book, that they have fixed, to the best of their ability and distributed to the best of their ability so that they can earn back the money. And these are, large publishers. It can be trade publishers. So when you talk about trade books, these are the usual novels, nonfiction titles that you see in the bookstores. And then you have the educational or academic titles. These are the ones published by textbook publishers. When it comes to educational or academic, the ones published by universities. You also have mid-sized publishers. These are just determined in terms of like how many books they come out with a year. And even the small presses are part of traditional or follow the traditional publishing model. So you do have like small indie publishers who go through the same process. They will acquire a title, they will take care of everything, and then they will pay an advance or a royalty to the author. Now, because there are a lot of publishers, but not as many people who want to be writers. Then you also have self-publishing because, like, I guess not all publishers can acquire all titles. Self-publishing is when all publishing activities are done by the author. So the author does not have a publisher. Some tasks may be outsourced, as I mentioned, editing, book design. I am pretty sure Mina is going to talk a lot about this. Later on, you'll have a slide that shows a romance class as an example. And self-publishing can be done by the author alone, or more frequently, that I've seen, it's easier to do it with a community. There is no like big corporate entity or even like an indie entity that helps the helps the author. They just do everything by themselves. And when they outsource, they can engage a publishing service. Again, editor, book designer, they would pay for all of this. And self-publishing can encompass, the range of formats. Can be digital only. Seems the easiest. It can be print only, or it can be a combination of digital or print. And I think some intrepid self-publishers might even try audiobook, since it might become easier now. And then you have the hybrid model, which is a pay-to-publish model. So it's kind of a combination of self-publishing and traditional publishing. However, you have an author who might be spending for a significant or half of the portion of publishing. So hybrid publishers used to be called vanity publishers, but right now they kind of differ, or at least differentiate vanity publishing from hybrid publishing. I don't really like the term vanity publishing because there are like always negative connotations to it, and I feel like if someone wants to publish and they want to spend for it, just let them if they want to. But vanity publishing usually is differentiated from hybrid publishing in that vanity publishers are those who will just take everything. So essentially, they're businesses that will say, okay, we will publish your book, but you will have to pay for most things. The layout, the printing, there might be a distribution cost or a split in distribution. And vanity publishers will supposedly take everything. So, regardless of what your book is, the quality of your book, they're just gonna like take the business, take your money, and then, provide you the service. Hybrid publishers try to differentiate themselves from vanity publishers because they're more selective, supposedly, meaning if 10 people submit a manuscript and the hybrid publisher says, oh, I only like 5 of them, so I'll just, publish these 5. But the author who submitted will still pay for a portion, whatever cost the hybrid publisher says. And it's also possible the author will spend for everything, or maybe just take advantage of the distribution network of the hybrid publisher. So these are all existing models for publishing. Hybrid publishing only came into existence, actually, if I'm not mistaken, it became more popular rather in the 21st century or this century, mainly because there were a lot of technological tools that made it easier to do hybrid publishing. So if you look at these three models, in terms of the local industry, if you want to like situate yourselves, like what are examples of these in the local industry? So for traditional publishing, it's the usual names that you're familiar with. You have the big publishers, Anvil, Adarna, Precious Pages, Summit. These are the and many more. These are the traditional trade book publishers. You have the educational publishers like Rex, Vibal, Phoenix, Aviva. You have the I would say mid-sized publishers, but they're also indie publishers. I will make a note about, or I'll say something about indie, the term indie publishers in a bit. But Avenida, Comiket, Everything's Fine, Balangay, they're like mid-sized to small indie publishers, but also doing the traditional publishing model. And even the small presses like Paper Trail Projects, Gantala Press, Grana Books, etc. They're very, very small publishers. They participate in BLTX, but they, as far as I know, they use a traditional publishing model. And then for self-publishing, number one example, Mina can talk about this a lot later, is Romance Class, where they do a lot of self-publishing. Although now, as I understand it, Romance Class also has partnerships with traditional publishers. And I don't know if like they've also, I don't think you've done hybrid publishing, Mina, but you can clarify, you can correct me later if I'm mistaken. And then I have a couple of examples here. For example, Dekada 70 is published by Anvil, by Luwalhati Bautista. But when the English edition came out, the 70s, she actually opted to publish it herself. So I don't know if you've seen the English translation of Dekada 70. Has a yellow cover, yellow-orange cover, and it's entitled The 70s. And Luwalhati Bautista self-published it. This was before she passed away. So she was actually like looking for, I mean, she was selling it online, and she was looking for bookstore partners to whom she could sell it to. Because as a self-publisher, you would have to do the distribution, the marketing, the selling, all of the legwork. Second Chance Books, this is, I just saw this I saw this year. And I got a copy of it by Karina Gasquel. I think if you follow book talkers on TikTok, you might be familiar with her. She also self-published Second Chance Books. I think she had this charming book launch in Everything's Fine in Makati. And I think she also had like different merch to give away. So that's an example. But I wanted to show you that even established authors and younger authors do self-publish, and many, many others. Hybrid publishing, you have Central Books Publish on Demand. So a lot of, actually, it's a lot of nonfiction stuff on nonfiction authors rather who have their titles published by Central Books. And a couple of publishers, Papercat and 8 Letters, as far as I am aware, and again, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, they follow a hybrid publishing model because they I think they do select which manuscripts they publish, but as an author, you share the cost or you pay some of the cost. I think the printing costs, I'm not so sure what other costs there are. So they follow a hybrid publishing model, which is why one of the things that hybrid publishing can do is that they can have like a very big catalog at the start because if you have like a lot of people and if you have the authors who are willing to pay for the service, you can actually like produce like a lot of titles as opposed to, let's say, traditional publishing who will shoulder all of the costs. They might have a limited set of editors, so they can, so the number of titles that they come up with will be limited by the workload of the editors, and also possibly the print run. So this is the local industry. Now, I noted in your introduction earlier that you wanted me to like give more of an overview of the local industry, but my most of my experience in the last decade has not necessarily been in the local industry because I work with a U.S. publisher. So if you look at, these models in terms of the international, I put there in parentheses the US publishing industry, then traditional publishing, naturally, you have the biggest publishers, you have the big five US publishers, the university presses, mid-sized publishers, and of course, there are still a lot of indie pubs in the US. Self-publishing, and perhaps this is where more of the technology that you're familiar with will come in, you actually had the growth of the self-publishing platforms that really pushed self-publishing worldwide. So one is Kindle Direct Publishing, which is Amazon's. And Kindle Direct Publishing just really makes it very easy for a lot of authors. They can, they can have a manuscript. And it's been a while since I worked in ebooks, but I remember when you were working in ebooks, even if you have like the barest form of a manuscript, like a PDF file, you can actually upload it. And within minutes, you will have a published book of your own. It might not look nice, but you'll have a published book. So Kindle Direct Publishing, a lot of people have been using that, are still using it. And I suppose if you are ever subscribed to Kindle Unlimited, you might have come across a lot of the self-published titles in KDP. Now there are also other platforms I mentioned here, Wattpad and Webtoon. Other similar platforms like Manta. What is the other? I forget the other names now. Or even the fanfic platforms. So are those really self-publishing? Because usually when you upload to those platforms, just the very, very basic process, you're uploading the story. You're not really uploading to earn money. Except on Webtoon now, I think in Webtoon they have tried to monetize some of it, and also on Wattpad, depending on whether you're taken into their program. But when it started out, it's really just, uploading the story, and authors would have a Patreon so that, people who want to pay, they would subscribe to Patreon. So then I don't think that you can technically put them in self-publishing in that they don't have an ISBN, or it's not like one final book that's a product. But I do mention it here. Why? Because these platforms where you also have just authors sharing stories like Wattpad or the fanfic sites or Webtoon, um, these have actually become a huge source of manuscripts and stories for the traditional publishers. A lot of them might have started out with a story on Wattpad, decided to self-publish it themselves, and then grew so big. And that's why I also have an asterisk. So that's why there's an asterisk on Wattpad Webtoon. And there's an asterisk on TikTok, because what we're seeing now is that a lot of the maybe previously on Wattpad, and then the author decides to self-publish it, and then it finds an audience, and then it gets huge, maybe because of TikTok. And TikTok is such a huge, huge driver of book sales. In fact, TikTok is the best driver of book sales among all of the social media, although TikTok doesn't say it's a social media platform. But among all of the social media platforms, there is nothing that compares to TikTok. Not Facebook at its height, not Instagram at its height, not Twitter, definitely. TikTok is the one that pushes a lot of the book sales. So let's say self-pub author became popular on TikTok. Immediately, maybe not so immediately, but eventually, a traditional publisher will come knocking and will offer to publish it traditionally for wider distribution. You hope. So this is what I mean, that they're different models, but sometimes they overlap or they cross over. They're not like all separate. And then hybrid publishing, there are the usual advice for hybrid publishing is that because it's a pay to publish, pay to play model, you really have to curate, or you have to like look into the hybrid publisher that you are partnering with, because there's actually a list online, you can search it, hybrid publishers not to work with, because there have been for lack of a better word, scams, especially for like, for some authors. So these ones are hybrid publishers that have been around for a while. They're actually kind of big. I think Greenleaf and Amplify, they mostly focus on nonfiction titles. And then if you click on that link, there's more. Okay, so at this point, then I would be talking more about the work that I'm familiar with, which is U.S. publishing. And again, let me know if I don't have enough time anymore because I see it's 4:35. So I mentioned that for traditional publishing, the big ones are the big five US publishers. These would be the big five. Hachette, HarperCollins, Simon Schuster, Macmillan, and Penguin Random House. And I work for Penguin Random House, which is actually the largest of the big five. Simply because Penguin and Random House were the two largest before. It used to be Big Six, and they merged in 2013. So when they merged, then of course they became a behemoth. Last year they were supposed Penguin Random House (PRH) was supposed to buy Simon and Schuster, but it was stopped by the DOJ because it would just be so huge. So the big five in U.S. publishing. Now Remy earlier said that a lot of the things or a lot of technology now has actually led to a growth in reading. And even a growth in print book sales, which is not the narrative that you will see a lot of people mention when they talk about local books or books in general. The usual comments I see, and admittedly from people who may not be looking into the book industry that much, is that, oh, print books are dying because people are always reading ebooks because people are on their phones. There's Wattpad is free. There's Netflix. None of that is true. And if you look at the data, it will support you that print book sales have been growing. And Netflix, these publishers, we all love Netflix because if there is a show or a movie that comes out on Netflix that is based on the book, we love that because that is the first thing that the bookstores will ask for. So print book sales are growing. This is just to illustrate. This was actually data for the first half of 2024. So top 10 books of 2024 for adult fiction and nonfiction. So just to show you what the numbers are. And also I want to reiterate that now I'm talking about the US book industry, which is different from the Philippine book industry. But I always like to show some of these things because I think that we have fantastic authors, we have fantastic creators. No one denies that. In all of my travels and all of my dealings internationally, no one denies that the Philippines has great creators, has great artists. But what I think we could work on, and I think the industry is working on it continuously, is to look into other ways about how we can professionalize things. It can be marketing, it can be like the publishing process, editing process. It is definitely distribution, sales and marketing. The US is a very big market. That's why they can sell 829,000 books in the first half of a year for one title. And number 10 is a Stephen King title, 154,645. And these are just print book copies. So this is in the US. Unfortunately, we don't have this data. And I think that's one of the things that we need to improve on because this data is easily available in mature publishing markets. The US, the UK, I think some parts of Europe, Canada. They get POS data, point of sale data, so that you can, it is released to the public how many books were sold. So you can immediately identify what are the top 10 books, etc., etc. The reporting isn't perfect because this is from Circana BookScan, which relies on reporting of certain bookstores. But I think Circana BookScan can cover around 80-ish% of print book sales. What BookScan doesn't cover is the sales for international. So these are only the copies sold in the US. they cannot capture how many copies of Funny Story were sold outside the US, which means that there are more. Because if you go to a bookstore now, you will see Funny Story by Emily Henry. So you know that there are copies in the Philippines, there are copies in Thailand, there are copies in Germany. So that one is not captured. So also to illustrate the difference between sorry, let me delete that. The difference between the local book industry and I guess more mature book industries. So I talked about the big five, and this is the big five that I work for, Penguin Random House. Penguin Random House, there you see on the right side, that is the entire company, which is divided into several groups. And each group is divided further into different publishers or imprints. So if you think about that column on the leftmost, each of those is like it's one publisher by itself. If you think about local publishers. So Anvil is just, let's say, one GP Putnam and Sons. Precious Pages is just one Berkeley. It's there. Razorbill is one Adarna. Del Rey is one Avenida. All of those are one just like one publisher, but they will come out with anywhere from, let's say, in a year, 20 to maybe 100 titles in a year. Or maybe more. I could be wrong. So this is just one big five. So if you look at the other four big five publishers, their organizational structure is also as complex as this. And this is just something from one of our from one of the things that we usually give accounts or like people who need to be introduced to Penguin Random House. Just to reiterate that there are 300 independent imprints in just Penguin Random House. And these are the samples of the imprints, I guess, just the logos instead of the names. So you have different Penguin, different pa sa Random House, Crown is different, Knopf is different, and then you have publishers under the children's line. So you have Penguin Young Readers Group and the Random House Children's Book Group. And part of my job is to know all of them. And all of the other, so these are the publishers. Under them, there might still be imprints. And most big publishers, I think all of the big five don't just distribute our own titles. We also distribute clients, meaning they are not our publishers. They don't belong to Penguin Random House. They might range from large to mid-size. I think my small did dyan. Actually, mostly mid-size. They range from large-ish to mid-size indie publishers who don't have the distribution network that Penguin Random House might. So they want to use that distribution network and the sales team. So these are the additional publishers that PRH will distribute. And as you can see, even a company as big as Disney does not have its own sales and distribution. It uses a sales and distribution of Penguin Random House or National Geographic or Quirk or MIT Press is there or DC and Marvel. So what I also wanted to show you is that if you look at all of these publishers, they all have their own specializations. And these will come into play if you are looking to publish a book. This is just a slide showing you that all of these things, all of the previous slides you saw is just Penguin Random House US, but it's a global company. So you have like in other countries. But yeah. So how many new titles do we publish each year? It ranges from 10,000 to I think 12,000. That's new titles each year. So if you think about the range and the scale. The scale is very different from, let's say, the scale of local publishing. Um, because this is again just one of the big five, and we haven't even talked about the other independent publishers in the US. It's just PRH in the US. So that's 10,000 titles. So you have to imagine what it would be like if you worked in a bookstore and you were in charge of acquiring books, and you have to deal with one publisher with 10,000 titles, a second publisher with 8,000 titles, a third publisher with 7,000 titles, a fourth, so on and so forth, and then you have the smaller publishers. Can you look at all of those books? And what, if you were the publisher, what do you need to do so that the bookstore will actually look at all of those books? Because that's a lot. And on average, I think, if people can read 100 books a year, that's already magnificent. But if you have to actually look into thousands and thousands and thousands of books per month, then you have to find ways to manage. This is actually a slide of the top 45 books that I generated as of this week for Southeast Asia. Okay, how can I do that? Because sorry, I'm not showing you the technology, but we do have the technology to actually I want to see what is top in the Philippines from January 2023 to January to December 2024. I can change the date range. I can change, I can change the territory. I can change the country. And I can change all of that. And our system will spit out the ISBNs. And then I will just plug that ISBN into another system, which will generate all of these covers for me in this format already. So these are the top 45 titles in Southeast Asia overall as of 2024 that are published by Penguin Random House. And you might recognize some of them if you like going to the bookstores, if you like reading. It's really, and because we publish everything, everything, and I sell everything, you'll see a wide range there. Now, since I was asked to talk about how you can get published, again, I don't know how much time I have left. I feel like I don't have as much time anymore. But anyway, let me know if you want to cut me off at some point. On the PRH website, there is actually a short explainer on how you can get published, and I'm leaving the link there. And this is that's what you will see when you click on the link. And this is a summary for how you can get published. Now, let me qualify. Again, I am talking from the point of view of if your goal is to be published in the US with a traditional publisher. Because the thing I forgot to say, by the way, sorry, let me go back to this. The thing I forgot to say is that these are different models of publishing. Is one better than the other? It really depends on what your goals are. Is it better to publish in the Philippines or in the US or elsewhere? Again, it also depends what your goals are. Some people are really happy with community publishing, with just targeting okay, I live in Cavite. I want published books that will service people in Cavite. And that's what they want to do. So could be traditional publishing, could with small presses, could be self-publishing. It depends. Some people want to I want to be read all over the world. I want to be read by everyone in English. Then your best bet, if it's all over the world. I mean, you can self-publish and reach a lot of people all over the globe. But if you do get published by a traditional publisher that is big enough and that has a wide enough distribution capacity, then you have a better chance of attaining that goal. So again, all of these are legit models. You just have to know what your goals are and pick the one that makes the most sense for you. Sorry. Which is why I'm going to go back to this. This one, how it can get published. Therefore, let me situate it. This is if you want to get traditionally published, not in the Philippines, but in the US. Why? Because in the Philippines, you don't need some of the things here because we don't have them. What don't we have? We don't have step two. There are no literary agents in the Philippines anymore. Well, there are not. Is there? I don't think so. Okay. So step one, complete your manuscript. If you're doing fiction, usually before you submit it, the agents or the publishers expect a full manuscript. For nonfiction, they expect mostly a proposal. There, if you go to that site, there are actually tips and there are links to like how you can create a good proposal for nonfiction, and also other resources. And then once you have those things, then you find a literary agent. How do you find a literary agent? Or first, why do you find a literary agent? If you're trying to get published in the US with a traditional publisher, most of them will only entertain manuscripts from an agent. Partly because if they don't, there's just so many and it just falls into the slush pile. The slush pile is what they call unsolicited manuscripts, and that's where they just dump manuscripts that they never asked for. And sometimes there are discoveries in the slush pile, but sometimes your manuscript just languishes there. If it comes from an agent, and the editor asks for it, then it has a better chance of actually being reviewed by the editor. And the other reason why they use literary agents is that the agent is the one who can really navigate the business side for you. Contracts, rights, and these are mature markets, so there are a lot of discussions about contracts and rights. So how do you find literary agent? I put here like a few links, and if I have time, I wanted to show you. Query Tracker, Poets and Literary Writers, Literary Agents Database, and Publishers Marketplace. This is Query Tracker. So it says it's free. And I know people who use it to find literary agents and also just keep track of I've sent already, I've sent a query to like 40 agents, and that's not uncommon. You can also look at the agent data. And then there's also literary agents database here. And again, most of these are agents that will represent English language for US and possibly UK rights. But this is my favorite only because I have an account here. Publishers Marketplace. So Publishers Marketplace is also a place where you can look at there's a job board, but you can search for an author's name, find out who the author's agent is, and then find out what deals the agent has made. For example, I typed in Thea Guanzon's name. Thea Guanzon is the only Filipino who made it to the New York Times bestseller list with her book. And then this is her agent, Taole, which I clicked on. And if you click on it, you'll see where she's associated with, total deals. You'll see which editor she sold to, top imprints, what is her ranking, what has she sold more. And these are all data that can help you determine oh, okay, is this a good agent to submit to? But the first thing that you have to look into though is if the agent is actually entertaining manuscripts at that point, because they will say if they're open to manuscripts or not. So yeah, so there are all of these things. Now, is it easy to find the agent? But I don't know, not really. I mean, for some it's easy, for some it might take a while, for some their first agent didn't work out, then they're, looking for another agent. So it's a whole process. But again, if the goal is US publication, in a way that will make it hopefully easier for you, then yeah, it might be easier to find, or it might be better to find a literary agent. And then you work with the agent to prepare the submission to editors. That is another, sorry, I think, okay, I lost my video. There we go. So it might be another long process because when your manuscript is prepared to go on submission may take days or years. depending on, whether editors are interested in your manuscript or not. But it is the agent who submits it to the different editors. And the role of the agent is to know who is likely to be interested in this book. And also, in all of the steps in publishing that I have been exposed to, the word that they use most often is love. So at the very, very beginning, an agent actually usually has to fall in love with your book before the agent decides to represent you. The editor has to fall in love with the book before the editor decides to acquire it. And later on, if marketing loves the book, then they will make it a lead title. And if sales loves the book, then we will push it. So a lot of it is really dependent on love. Anyway, that's step 3. And if you're lucky enough to be acquired, you move into step 4. Then that's a book deal. And then, the agent will then negotiate. But will always ask you whether this makes sense to you. But also, you have to listen to your agents. Many a local author has told me, the ones who have acquired agents and the ones who have had books sold internationally, that because here we're not very used to advances, um, meaning being paid money upfront before the book is published. When they were presented with a certain advance, they were like, yes, I'll take it. And then it was their agent that said, no, that's too low. And I swear to you, I've heard this from multiple authors, again, who have been published in the US. They will say that they cried at the start because they thought, if I say no to this, who is going to offer me more money? Because, again, if you're from the Philippines, you don't think that anyone else is going to offer you more money. But most of the time, I think, yeah, from the stories that I've been told, the agents were right. They would get a bigger offer that they would take. Usually, how big is the offer? Depends. But this is actually a key to the types of advances that are offered. If you go to publishers' lunch, they don't necessarily say how much was offered, but they will use adjectives sometimes. They will say that so and so has, or Berkeley has acquired this manuscript from Mina Esguerra in a good deal. When they say good deal, that means that the advance that the author got is anywhere between $100,000 to $250,000. Okay. And there have been Filipinos who have gotten very nice deals. I know of 2 who got significant deals. I know of 1 who got a major deal. And they're based here. So all to say that, are these things available to Filipinos? Can a Filipino be published by a US publisher? This is just a sample of Penguin Random House titles that are going to come out in 2025. And yes, this is a mix of Filipinos who are based here and also Phil-Amps. But yeah, there are a lot of Filipinos who have been published internationally, and they're growing more and more each year. These are the ones who are based here. You probably know Pat Evangelista. Samantha Soto Yambao has a new book coming out. She has been published before by Random House. Now she's coming out with Water Moon. It's one of the highlights of the publisher. Itchy Batakan has a new short story, Accidents Happen. Tanya Guerrero, this is her first adult novel. She has books before, but they were middle grade titles. This is a very cozy read. Thea Guanzon, who made it to the New York Times list for Hurricane Wars, and the second book in the series came out. Those are under HarperCollins, but this is her first book with Del Rey, which is under Penguin Random House, and it is a monster romance that's based on Critical Role. So if you're familiar with Critical Role, D&D, that's in that universe. Magic Treehouse is a classic book. It's written by Mary Pope Osborne, but yes, is it time already? Thank you so much. Yeah, that one is illustrated by Joe Mike Tejido, and Tori Tagliar is based here. So anyway, these are some titles just to illustrate. Maybe I will end with, okay. So I'm often asked to give a talk on publishing. In all of these years, I've only been asked to give a talk about my job, my actual job once. Because I think most people, when they think about publishing, it's mostly concentrated on the creative side. But there's way, way more to publishing than the creative and the editorial side. If you want to know how books make it around the world, that is not in the creative or editorial side. That is what happens after. So that involves supply chain, marketing, distribution, and sales. And that is a part of publishing that I think not a lot of people talk about. There's always discussion about distribution. We need more distribution in the Philippines, but exactly how is distribution attained? What are the channels? How do you incentivize distributors? How do you create more booksellers? Not a lot of discussion goes around that. But those are the portions that mature publishing markets understand very well. And those are the things that they will lock in early on, because those are the things that will ensure that they can, they can bring books to this country or that country, they can make sure that they have the attention of the decision makers in the bookstores, etc., etc. So anyway, this is just a summary for Penguin Random House. This is a sales team internationally. This is my territory. And really part of my job is to, most publishers, well, most big publishers and even some mid-sized publishers, again, in mature markets, have people like me whose job it is to make sure that our books are known and the books are highlighted to the booksellers around the world, so that and we use tools, we use catalogs, we use presentations like this, we visit accounts, we have meetings with them, and these are meetings with decision makers. We look at the bookstores, we look at the bookshelves, how are our books merchandised. We participate in events, we provide them with merch and stuff. Those are the buyers of Kinokuniya, by the way, Thailand, and this one is the Asia Books, Thailand. So we check out different models of bookstores. And then we have the marketing and publicity side, meaning, and these things, we don't just come up with them in terms of like, oh, it's probably cute to have this. Well, sometimes you do. So I say, oh, it's cute to have this. But a lot of the time also we ask the booksellers, what would help you, sell more of this to your customers? Do you want like a tote bag? Do you want a sticker sheet? Do you want something? So a lot of it is really, I know I'm supposed to talk about technology, but yes, we have a lot of technology with the data that we have, with the marketing and publicity, with keeping track of metrics. But a lot of it is still relationship. Yeah. So there, just summary. And yeah, ending that, ordering logistics and collecting. This is a part that I've seen big publishers in major markets really attend to. How to get books from one place to the other, shipping, forwarders, things like that. Because once those are locked in, and also, yes, pricing, etc. Once those are locked in, things become easier. Maybe you can ask us later on. I know I've extended my time, and I think I've answered some of them already. So yeah, and maybe it's not Q&A because it's Mina's time, but I will end there. Sorry for extending, and thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much po, Mix Honey de Peralta. So I agree po na talaga namang our Filipino authors or creators are incredibly talented and deserve more recognition. And yung use ng social media platforms, like kagaya nga po ng sabi niyo kanina, yung TikTok, is indeed a game changer for authors in promoting yung mga work nila, especially for self-publish and hybrid publish authors kasi it allows them to directly connect with readers and showcase their stories creatively. And also, um, key takeaway ko rin po na hybrid publishing also seems like a promising option for authors looking for more control while still getting professional support. Definitely worth siya for those curating or exploring deeper for those planning to publish. So, ikaw naman, kasi kanina ko pa siya naririnig na medyo nagpa-flashbacks daw sa kanya yung mga Wattpad era niya.
Ayun nga po, parang na-mention ni Ma'am Hani na yung about sa Wattpad, that we could be inspired by the stories in them. And ayun, parang naalala ko na parang ako din nagsulat din ako ng Wattpad story, but I did not continue. But at least I was able to read other stories that inspired me to write other things, you know, kahit hindi siya story, just like articles, yeah, and yeah.
So, I completely agree with you kasi ano din ako, frustrated writer. So, ayun, now for sure, ay meron ding insights ang ating mga participants and questions as well. So, maya-maya lang ay magpa-proceed na tayo sa Q&A session. But before that, kilalanin na rin natin agad yung ating second speaker.
Okay, so it is our honor to introduce our second speaker. She is an accomplished author and publisher of English language romance and contemporary fiction. Her works have received recognition, winning Filipino Readers' Choice Awards and being featured on platforms like NPR, BuzzFeed, and Seattle Review of Books. A passionate advocate for Filipino authors and readers, she regularly gives talks on writing, publishing, nurturing creative communities, and promoting inclusivity in the romance genre. So she is also the founder of Romance Class, a community of Filipino authors writing romance in English. Since 2013, she has helped over 100 authors write and publish their books, which are now read in 52 countries around the world. So Miss Mina also works as a media adaptation agent with LA-based Bold MP, developing Filipino romance content for an international audience. In addition to her writing, Miss Mina is the founding co-editor of Comicet's romance imprint, Blush Books, and serves as editor-at-large for new adult titles at Vibal Publishing. So please join us in giving a warm welcome to Miss Mina Esguerra.
Good afternoon po.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? So before I start, can I request the people who have joined and are watching, if you're an aspiring writer, if you're a writer currently, can you say hello in the chat so I see how many writers are here? So thank you for sharing my slides. Kamusta? Meron bang nag-chat na writer? Ay, hello, I'm starting to see. Okay. Sino pa? Okay. Hello. Okay, so please just keep saying hello, writers, as I start speaking. So first, I want to say good afternoon and thank you for inviting me to be part of your forum. I'd like to present my writing community romance class as an example of how authors can use technology and community to do and experience publishing in a supportive and less expensive environment. So I realized that technology is so part of my process. So I cannot talk about writing and publishing without talking about technology. So it might seem like I'm not talking about a lot of the tech, but please understand that everything underneath what I'm talking about has tech and is tech. You may also have questions for me about the creative challenges and life as an author. So I'm happy to answer those too. Next slide, please. So I'm a romance author and publisher. I have written and published 28 books. I teach writing, romance genre, and publishing. I started romance class in 2013, and it is an online romance writing class. And since then, we've helped over 100 Filipino authors write and publish their romance books. So I'm glad Honey talked about the different kinds of publishing locally as well. If you notice, it now says, I am an author, I am a publisher, but I'm also editor for several Philippine publishers. What that means is as I teach people to write and as I help them self-publish, I can also direct them to publishing partnerships where they get more support and more distribution and an actual Philippine publisher working for them. So that's something that I was able to build based on relationships, just being in this industry for this long and figuring out what works for all of us. Next slide, please. So in this session, quickly, I'll just go through my self-publishing process. I'll talk about romance class as a community. Everyone in romance class self-publishes. And then as a group, we help each other out. And then if romance is not the thing that you write, you can actually recreate this process. So I will tell you the characteristics of a community that can provide publishing support for each other. And then I will share all of my publishing tools. Next slide, please. So I'd like to define some of the terms I'll be using in this presentation. Self-publishing, when I say self-publishing, what I mean is you, the author, are the publisher. This doesn't mean that you did all the work. I assume you wrote the book, but for everything else that is required to publish a book, even if people contributed to the editing, design, layout, and printing, I consider you a self-publisher if you provided the direction or the payment or managed all of this, even if you didn't do all the work. That means you take credit. When you are a self-publisher, that means you take credit as publisher and you make all the decisions. You own all the rights to the book. You gain all the rewards, and you are also responsible for all the consequences. Some of these consequences may be negative, like reprinting when there are errors and replacing defective copies. But that's just something you have to take on because yes, you are the publisher. Another thing that I want everyone watching this to remember is that time has value. The hours that you spent writing the book has value, even if you never paid yourself for it. If a friend spent several hours editing your book, that has value even if they did it for free. The time spent building an audience on social media, on Wattpad, Archive of Our Own, Webtoon, Twitter, X, all of that has value even if you never paid yourself for it. I enjoy self-publishing and recommend that authors try it at least once because I feel that it helps us appreciate publishing and everyone who works in that process. It shows us the limits of what we can do for ourselves and provides a baseline for our sales and marketing data. And even if we eventually choose to work with a traditional publisher, we can use that baseline to know when our publisher is underperforming or performing quite well, actually. So when that happens, working with a publisher becomes a choice to partner with someone who can help us help the book reach more people, help us so I don't have to do most of the work rather than the only way to get a book out. Next slide, please. So now that I've advocated for self-publishing, here's my process. Writing, editing, cover design and layout, digital publishing, print publishing. So based on the theme of this event, I was asked to give advice on the costs associated with publishing and how young authors who are starting out, or authors who want to start self-publishing can still publish without this financial setback. Actually, most of the steps of self-publishing, as I do it and as I share here, most of it can be done without spending anything but time. Again, this doesn't mean it's free, just that this can be learned. You can spend your time learning it. You can do this on your own time, you can do this yourself, and you don't have to pay anyone to do this for you. Next slide, please. So let's go through the steps of my process. The first step for me is writing. because I'm an author and this is the most important thing to me, I mainly write novellas. So I write romance novellas that's about 40,000 words. And then when I'm ready and I believe that the manuscript can be read by other people and it's worth money and people will actually pay for it, I send it off to the next stage, which is editing. I think the best editing has to be done by someone else who is not the author. You're supposed to work with an editor, I think. I think there is a limit to what we can do as authors if we are editing our own work. Editors are supposed to help us refine and polish our book in terms of story and pacing and messaging and how our book will compare against other books in the same genre. Hopefully the editor has the knowledge of the industry and can honestly assess the book and see where it fits in the landscape of the other books that are just like it. It's not just about correcting spelling errors. For this part, I work with at least 3 editors, a developmental editor, a copy editor, and a proofreader. So those are different kinds of editors covering different essential parts of the editing process. Some authors are also artists, so they can probably design their own book covers, but I can't. I cannot. So I hire artists, photographers, and designers to make my covers. I am not a graphic designer, but I ended up studying how to lay out ebooks and print books. There are tutorials and templates online, and eventually I made a template for myself. So you don't have to spend next, so that's for layout. For digital publishing, you don't actually have to spend anything to publish an ebook on Amazon or Gumroad or any of these websites that can sell your ebook. You just need to upload a Word document or EPUB, a cover image, and provide the details of about the book. But you also need to get paid. So you need to have a bank account or an account at a payment service like Wise, PayPal, GCash, and others. I started teaching self-publishing. I was already in my 30s. So I was working, I already had a bank account, and I took for granted the fact that a lot of people starting young and new probably would not have the kind of like history with banks and financial institutions that some of us who are older have. So definitely if you want to self-publish, you have to find out how you can get paid actually. So it's easy, but then you have to figure out that part. Because you have to prepare for success. And then finally, for print publishing, you don't have to spend anything actually to print. You don't have to spend anything to publish in print on Amazon because they use something called print on demand. You just need to upload your print layout manuscript, your print cover spread, and then again, make sure that you can get paid so that you have a bank account, you have all the documents that you need so that when people start buying it, you can receive the money. So you don't actually have to order like 100 copies or 1,000 copies of your book to get started. And then in the Philippines, we also have print-on-demand companies that can process a very small order. I usually order like 3 copies of my book at a time. And then I just order more when there's demand for more. Next slide, please. So before you get worried that this is too much work for one person, it is too much. It is a lot of work for one person. But I'll show you first the case of romance class. This is my writing community. This is a writing community that came out after I started a free online romance writing class. And then what happened was it was quite successful in that more than a dozen people finished writing a manuscript, and then they were interested in learning how to self-publish it. And then now we had a dozen books that we needed to buy and support, and we needed to keep going. So from there, everything started because when you promise to help, when you teach people how to write a book and then they write a book and then they publish it, of course, ako rin yung bibili, ako rin yung magbabasa. And that commitment has to be the same for the community. So that's kind of how we accidentally formed a writing community and a publishing support community. So this is what we do for each of those steps. For writing, we still do the online class every year or so. I think I did class number 11 this year. So everyone who joins romance class has the chance to be part of romance class whenever it's held again. But if you've attended before or you're a romance reader, what your role is to help the new authors. Your role is to give comments, give feedback, because what's happening here is that everyone likes to write their own story, but not everyone has access to editors and feedback. And that's what the class and community can provide. And then formally, if someone finishes a book and is ready to publish it, we give them access to editors. So over the 10 plus years that the class has been around and the community has been around, we've actually discovered that some people don't want to be writers pala. They joined the class wanting to write romance, but found their calling more in editing. So now we have editors who are experienced and ready and know how to edit romance. So that's what we provide for each other as well. We've also met a lot of artists who have participated in one way or another in the community. So designing covers, doing photo shoots for covers, that's all within the community as well. For publishing, I've taught every class and every batch of romance class how to self-publish on Amazon. So definitely anyone who goes through the class can pick up how to publish. Uh, it's easy and to the point that sometimes we sit down with each other, do a live demo, or help someone in person so that they can hit publish and have their book available on Amazon within hours. And then the other thing we've tried to do and tried to address that Honey mentioned is distribution. So you cannot do full distribution of your book as one person. And even as a community of people who have other jobs throughout the week and families and other things to attend to, we cannot actually handle serious distribution of our books. But we do what we can. We participate in book fairs. We volunteer to bring books to sell. We take turns as tindera. So tulong-tulungan lang. But yeah, as we scale up, this is cute. Being part of of book fairs and book markets are cute and fun and educational for us, but we do need to scale up, I think. So we started partnering with local publishers so that we could get more distribution and wider distribution for our books, which is possible. Next slide, please. So what are the characteristics of a community as publishing support? Again, I gave the case study of romance class and my community. We happen to write romance. Some people make the mistake that, hey, romance class is a community. I have a book that is totally not romance. I think I will get romance class to sell it because they're selling at book fairs, right? That it doesn't work that way actually. So the aspect of community here is that you have to be working with people who read the same thing and like the same kind of book. So you will have to gravitate toward people and consider as community people whose books are in the same genre, the same language, or at least have the same audience. So even though I shared what romance class can do, you can recreate that for your own genre, for your own type of book, for your own groups. And this is what I think you can do. So number one, read each other. So all the authors here, if you're working together, if you don't know each other yet, I think the first way to really start the community going and understand again that technology is always behind this is to read each other. Read your peers, read the genre or the type of book that everyone is writing, the type of literature that you're publishing, because ultimately you need to be able to look at each other's work, your friend's work, and honestly assess where you are in the industry, which kind of fair or market you should be selling at, what audience what audience what kind of audience is into this, and where are they. And when I say that technology is behind this, you're communicating somehow. You can be communicating through an online forum. You might be on Discord together. You might be in different parts of the country, but you're still in touch because you are actually united by um you are uh you are united by the kind of book that you want to write rather than where you are physically. Um, Number two, so I suggest that you work together based on similar goals and principles. Medyo corny, I'm calling it mission vision, but that's essentially it. Writing communities fall apart when the only thing that the members have in common is that they're writing. This will be easier actually if you find people who have similar goals or agree to uphold the same principles in your writing. Romance class, for example, is a community that has required editorial guidelines. So yes, we write romance, but also a very specific kind of romance, which is our books all have to have agency, consent, and happily ever after. So not everyone is on board with that. Not everyone thinks about that. And sometimes they're not, if they don't really want to write books that way, that's okay actually. You can the, it's not that they don't want to be part of romance class, it's just that they didn't think of having this as a guiding principle, and it shouldn't be forced on anybody, yun nga, kasi agency nga and consent. So some writers who don't want to write that, that's perfectly okay. Your best working relationships will be with people who want the kind of story that you're telling, and if you seek those people first, uh it will focus your efforts and help you produce work that you actually want to produce. Because it is possible to waste a lot of time supporting authors or books who are creating things that you don't like. It's so easy. So might as well start off with supporting community, supporting writers, supporting books that are creating things that you enjoy. And they actually need that support anyway. And then three, contribute what you're good at. So some people, as I mentioned, that we learned in romance class, some people are great at editing and proofreading. Let them do that. Some people are great at selling, talking to strangers and asking them to check out this book. Let them do that because I cannot. I absolutely cannot. Some are talented artists, so they can contribute to a book in visually in terms of art, and not necessarily in the writing or in the editing. Let them do that. Let people who are good at something do that thing, but also be willing to learn from your mistakes and adjust your plans. And then the fourth characteristic of a community that can be publishing support is that the more successful you are, the bigger your responsibility is to read and promote and uplift the newer authors. This is a commitment that you have to make to each other. It is possible that as a community becomes more successful, the successful authors uh, just keep moving up, moving up, and you start and they become less accessible, 'di ba? Minsan may ganon. The more successful an author becomes in a community, the less accessible they become, and that does not work. To keep the community going, the more successful people have to feel the responsibility to be the ones to read the new authors, to take on the work of teaching people and introducing people to the contacts they've made. So even if we're busy and we don't have time to read anything and every single thing, make it a point to read at least one new author or new work. and make sure that everyone knows about it. Next slide, please. So these are my publishing tools. You might want to take a screenshot. I'm not going to go through every single thing, but so everything that I've talked about, my publishing, the way that I publish, where I sell, uh, where I talk to authors, where we talk to each other, where we collaborate, uh, how I get paid, how I brainstorm. It's all happening. I use all of these. So in terms of using technology, it seems like a lot. It seems like a page of suppliers and websites, but it's not just technology, but it's also relationships. So it's really like communities, relationships, and making sure that you are in touch with everything that's going on here. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I think that's it. I could talk on and on about about what I do, but I wanted to just start with the basics, and then if you have questions, then we can elaborate on everything. Thank you so much.
Ayan. So, thank you very much po, Mix Mina. That was a very insightful discussion on self-publishing and the power of community. So, one key takeaway na I'd like to highlight is how self-publishing not only empowers yung authors to take control sa work nila, but also emphasizes yung importance ng collaboration. So as Mix Mina shared kanina, communities like yung romance class show na success in publishing goes beyond yung individual efforts. So by sharing yung skills, reading each other's work, and contributing to a shared mission, yung mga authors can overcome challenges and grow together. So ang gandang reminder nun na while publishing is a personal journey, it can thrive through collective support. So let's take inspiration from this, and I think and think about how we can build and contribute to our own creative communities.
Yeah, I agree with you, partner, as well. And like, gusto ko lang yung pinaka natandaan ko talaga is how yung pinaka-line na read each other. Kasi tayo lang din nagtutulungan eh. In a community, kailangan we support each other. So, parang sabi mo kanina, you're a frustrated writer. So, I'll read your work. Ikaw naman, you read my work. And malay mo, matuloy pa natin yung mga novels na sinulat. Ayan, with the guidance of yung nabanggit na tips ni Miss Mina, with all the tools na kailangan nating gamitin. And siguro, we can continue pag meron na tayong time. Okay. Yeah. Alright, so now, partner, is mag-proceed na tayo sa ating Q&A question. Q&A session para marinig din natin yung mga comments and questions ng ating mga participants.
Again, thank you so much to our speakers for being here with us. And now, we will allot yung next 30 minutes for our Q&A session. We have received several questions from our audience, and we'll try to answer as many as possible.
So if you have more questions for our speakers, you may still use the link and QR code below or in the screen. So we will try to answer your questions given the time constraints. Okay, so everyone, please feel free to continue submitting questions through the Zoom chat box also, and we'll address them. Okay, so ito yung mga natanggap natin from the sign-ups. So here we have, so nowadays, I've noticed that contemporary novels have the fast fashion feel to them. So in the sense that the stories are somehow half-baked and could have been more refined or written with actually compelling narrative. So how can this phenomenon be further explained in relation to the fast-paced aspect of modern technology, especially with AI? So sino pong gusto mag-answer?
I can answer.
You
Okay.
wanted
Right.
I have
Si-
thoughts. Anyway.
I have an answer siguro as an author. Um I think I think writing as an author and an author who writes novellas, I don't think we need to go so fast in terms of producing. I think it's common to hear that it's common for us authors to get feedback that we're not writing fast enough, that trends are trends are hot and we need to keep up and catch up. And ako yung kind of author, but maybe it's my age, that I keep my own schedule. I a book will take as much time as it needs. I don't rush a book anymore. I don't so fast fashion comparison to on social media when they talk about books that seem to be a response to a trend, and it's so parang something was uso, something became trendy, and then suddenly a book that addresses that trend comes out so quickly. I've seen books, sometimes a book has been around for a long time and actually just managed to be noticed because something was trendy bigla. So I think it's always worth it because I don't rush my writing now. I think it's always worth it to take as much time as you need and not worry about fast the fast aspect of publishing. Honey?
Thank you, Mina. If I understand the question correctly, the person is asking like, why certain books seem half baked now? Because books are published quickly. Um, and my response to that is, I you just gotta read more, because my question. The books that you've read are half baked because there are books that might not have been developed well, but there are a ton of gorgeous, gorgeous books out there. They exist. So this is also one of the things that I noticed is that when there's criticism or commentary about the publishing industry, it's taken as a monolith when it's not. There are people who are romance readers, there are people who are literary fiction readers, there are people who are fantasy readers, there are people who will exclusively read fan fiction. There are people who write quickly, there are people who write fast. There are hybrid publishers that will take advantage of whatever trend there is, and there are people who will actually create the trends that such that you think that this is a trend now, but it was all of these books were acquired 2 years ago. So my question always, whenever someone says that, why are books now like this, is to ask, what have you been reading? Um, because, and I don't know what you guys are reading, but have you read James by Percival Everett? Have you read, there's this really nice romantasy right now, One Dark Window. Have you read, have you read these books? Um, or or are you reading like a lot of I guess the easy to read self-published romance titles, which there's nothing wrong with them. If you want like something quick and fun and you don't have to think about it a lot, those are perfectly fine. But just because a certain set of books seems like, oh, it needs more developmental editing, does not mean that it is reflective of the entire industry. Definitely, there is more facility right now to publish quickly. And self-publishing does that. Smaller publishers can publish very quickly. Hybrid publishers can publish quickly. Traditional publishers do not publish quickly, and they will insist on taking the time. So, which is not always a guarantee that the book is great. Okay, I mean, some of them will be great, some of them will not be. But yeah, you can create books quickly with AI, but there are actually people at the form. It's the same question as, it's the same kind of like reaction like when ebooks came and the fear was that, oh my god, print books will die because of ebooks. But there are actually people who are pushing print books, who are making sure that they're alive. And that's the same thing for, for whatever the situation is now. There are people who might use AI to write books quickly, to edit books quickly, but there are still the people who will make sure that, and again, it seems very, old and archaic, but who will still insist on going through the process of like making this book the best book it can be. So, yeah. Our company has creative principles, and one of the which were released recently, and one of the creative principles released was that when it comes to AI, and you can't avoid AI. At some point, we use AI. Not to write a book or not to edit a book, possibly to look at, what keywords are most popular right now on Amazon, and what keywords can I come up with and attach to this book, and the metadata could be something like that. But not to write or do any of the more creative stuff. And one of the creative principles we have is that you start with a human and you end with a human. And that is like sent out to the entire company. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but there are lots of great books out there. My gosh. Find them. Ask someone you trust about a book that you think is great. Find it and then read it. They're out there.
And so thank you for your answer. Pong question here. So ang sabi po is how different is the US and PH publishing market? And are there major differences in terms of how the market itself is organized? And does it make a difference if tech adoption is high in the market?
How different? Size, very big difference. I don't know how many people there are in the US right now, but you will see that the size is different because a small print run for a big publisher is 20,000. That's a small print run. A niche print run is 5,000. In the Philippine industry, I think that's already a large print run if it's 20,000. And yes, the US is more mature market in terms of publishing. For one, you have the agents. So the agents are a whole group of stakeholders. Again, unlike in the Philippine market, which cannot support, unfortunately, the existence of agents. The US market can support the existence of agents. There are, I guess, enough publishers, enough readers, enough booksellers that can support that additional layer, because basically agents are middlemen, right? But at least in our experience, they're kind of important middlemen. One of the disadvantages I think that the Philippines has is that, or if you don't have an agent in the Philippines, like I've met a lot of authors, even old established authors, that probably did not understand exactly what the contract said and signed away certain rights. And these would have been basic things that an agent would have told them. That you don't sign this, you don't sign these rights away, you don't allow the publisher to say they have the copyright of your book. Because a copyright is yours, the author's. So anyway, so yeah, agents are different. Size of the market is different. The processes are different. There was a part of the question. What was the last part of the question? I forgot. Aside from the difference between the US and the Philippine industry, what was the entire question again? Ano yung huling tanong?
Eto po, like Please wait a moment po.
Sure. So sorry. And the US can support giving royalties, sorry, advances rather, to
Does
authors.
does it
Sorry.
make a difference if tech adoption is high
Oh,
in the market, assuming
adoption.
that US is more open to tech than Southeast Asian market?
Actually, Southeast Asia has high tech adoption. Um, we have, I mean, there's some tech here that's like easier here in Southeast Asia than in the US. Um, for one, it's much easier to tap credit cards here than to tap credit cards in the US, or even around Vietnam. It's so easy to tap a credit card. Singapore has better tech. Actually, we have a consumer analytics department that does a lot of data analysis, and that's, again, I didn't talk a lot about the tech. I apologize, but there's so much. As Mina said, I think she phrased it well. Tech is really imbued in every aspect. And our consumer analytics team says that if they want to look at tech advancement, they look at Asia, not in the US.
My
Um,
I have a contribution lang
yeah.
as somebody who sells ebooks or at least uses retailers to sell ebooks. So for a long time, because of how we don't have Filipinos are not known to have credit cards and legitimately uh we were not experiencing a lot of movement in terms of our ebooks in the Philippines, but definitely we were selling a lot in the US. But then we started discovering online retailers that would accept GCash and Maya, and that changed the game. It suddenly for the same book, for the same title, we could track uh the purchases coming from the Philippines precisely because of the GCash and Maya. Just allowing GCash and Maya, uh suddenly so many Filipinos participated, paid for an ebook, actually bought a digital book, and and that's really what's, I think, in terms of technological in terms of the tech that will really help us, that will help an author, help a self-published author or somebody who published digitally. Just let every site have a Pinoy friendly payment option and suddenly we'll be everywhere.
Nina, for bringing that up. What I was going to say is it's not so much, yes, tech adoption, but more of the existence of platforms. It is the US platforms that are very strong, and because they are a big country that is economically advanced, they have the capacity to impose certain platforms. Um, so Amazon is there because, well, Jeff Bezos is there, but also because the Adobe content servers created by Adobe, and that has become the standard for ebooks in terms of DRM. And when I was working in ebooks, there were many local companies here who tried to make it happen. And none of it actually worked that well. One, it could be the tech. Two, it's just adoption wasn't big enough to justify the cost of sustaining that technology. But because the US, if a company like Adobe says, this is the Adobe content server, this is the DRM facility that Apple will use, that Amazon will use, then they can do it. So, and these are, I guess, examples of these are the back end things in technology that will make it easier for someone. It's not just the fact that you have Discord, you have a capacity. I mean, the Kindle works because the whole system around it works. Um, so yeah, a lot of the back end stuff, yes, they do have that. And unfortunately, we don't. But in terms of usage of technology, I don't know. Maybe I don't have enough data, but I always get the impression that if you look at usage of technology, we use technology a lot, especially social media. Sorry.
Okay, thank you so much, Bob, for those answers. We have a question here, Bob, for Miss Mina. What is agency like in the romance novels that romance class publishes?
Hello. Hi, Mary Ann. Okay, so first of all, romance class doesn't publish. We just provide editorial guidelines. So if authors want to follow them, then we if authors want to follow the guidelines, then we get to contribute. Then we agree to contribute editorial support, publishing support, and then but the author remains a self-publisher, and then we list the book on our website. But okay, so what we mean by agency is it's just um it's giving the characters the freedom to choose the romance. So yeah, this is just specific to what our community does and how we teach romance writing. Just as a response to a lot of Philippine romance media, wherein a lot of the story is usually the main character who tends to be a woman, but not always. Usually they're so usually they are not free to choose romance because of all the reasons. So it's layer upon layer of suffering, and usually they are not allowed to experience romance, and that's why a lot of Philippine romance media is tragic. So not that we're changing any of that. People can like what they like, but when people join romance class, I get to tell them uh so they pitch a story na, hey, so this guy asks her out and she says no, and I get to tell the author she says yes. She said a cute guy asks her out, she says yes. And then Filipino authors are actually surprised by that, because they have planned an entire story where the woman says no, 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 I won't go out with you, no, no, I'm too busy, no, I have obligations. But we just remind them in terms of the editorial guidelines are just there to remind the writers that if you are writing a romance and this is how you want to write it, let your character do things. Let them experience things, and frame your story so that they can actually experience the romance and not have to suffer through it. Yun yung like that's why that's an explanation of what agency means. Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Oh,
I'm also going to add, sorry, yeah, just let them enjoy sex. Don't punish them for having sex.
That's
Don't
part of
punish,
yes, that's part of romance class.
yeah.
Definitely.
No, I mean, like, because I read romance, I mean, it's so exhausting reading these stories. So, like, once a woman has sex, para, oh, she's like less than. I mean, you don't have the same measure for guys. Why do you have the same measure for women? Anyway, yeah, I mean, this. I just want to add that. Yeah, that's what a lot of romance is actually a very, very intelligent genre that has like very intelligent discussions. So, um, and that, I think romance is one of the first genres that actually talked about consent and the importance of like women's happiness. So yeah.
oh, thank you po, Miss Honey and Miss Mina. So ito na yung second to the last. What technical innovations do you foresee having the most significant impact on sustainability in publishing over the next decade?
Wow. Sustainability in publishing in the next decade. The price of oil. Um, yeah. The The price of what? Okay. One of the important things right now, I don't know if you're aware, is that Amazon last year actually like rocked the boat severely in the worldwide industry when it said that Amazon EU would no longer ship books from US publishers. So in the global publishing industry, that kind of, I mean, that wasn't good news for US publishing. And US publishing is pretty huge um in terms of like, number of books, dollars, and that's like I don't know how many billions of dollars already. Um because Amazon's press release is that they wanted to pay attention to their carbon footprint. Um to ship the books from the US to the UK or anywhere in Europe is, I mean, like it's bad for the environment. So they wanted to focus on locally printed titles. Um, but publishers not in Europe also needed a way to be able to sell their books in Europe without selling the rights, because these are like English language titles. You don't um Publishers might not want to sell the English rights to someone else because those are, the English rights are theirs. Um, let me know if let me know if I'm like if I'm talking what's this in a way that is not understandable anymore. But anyway, but some publishers found ways around that. And then also lately a lot of, well, not really a lot, some booksellers or some institutions ask where the or how the paper is produced. Um Meaning, is it produced in a way that is environmentally conscious? And I think let's say certain institutions, certain museums, they actually say no if the paper is not produced in a way that is environmentally conscious. I don't know if the paper thing is going to get more traction, but the shipping thing, yes, because shipping is getting more and more expensive. That's why I said price of oil. Also because paper has become more expensive. Um, 2 years or 3 years ago, also there was news in the New York Times about printers closing down or consolidating, which is why, a lot of people complain now that, ay, mahal-mahal ng libro. Dati-dati, ang mass market paperback, you can buy it at $3.99. Ngayon, more than 500 pesos na siya. Bakit ganon? Bakit napakasakit ng mga publishers, napakasakit ng mga bookstores, etc., etc. And the, the, the fact of the matter is, they're just gonna get more expensive. Because if the moment that you want them to be cheaper, you cannot sustain um enough royalty for the author and for the publishing house anymore. You can't, because the raw materials are more expensive. Paper, because printing, okay, because we have this whole environmental crisis, paper is becoming more expensive. Because printing companies have consolidated, that means that there are less opportunities to actually like get a slot in a printer, therefore it becomes more premium. Because there are wars all around, shipping has become more expensive. And all of that goes into the cost of your book. So even if a publisher wants to lower the price, they cannot anymore for the life of them lower the price. The book industry is interesting because you look at every other good in the market. The price of Coke can rise for a little bit, or even pandesal, or I don't know, bags or anything, or even luxury leisure goods. But the moment you raise the price of books, there is an uproar, which actually makes it difficult for the book industry then to become sustainable. So anyway, that's why I think, yeah, maybe no more wars. Sustainable. But okay, my serious answer is also looking for more sustainable local ways to do production. Because one way to lower the cost of the book is local production, but in a way that makes sense. Because the reason why you don't always do local production is economies of scale. Meaning, it's much cheaper to print 50,000 copies at one time than 1,000 copies. Even if you work in the cost of shipping, mas mura pa rin siya. But if there is a way to make local production cheaper and sustainable, then yeah, that works. And is that with technology? Most definitely. That has to do with a lot of technology. I'm not even privy to all of the tech that our production team uses because it is extremely complicated. And if you look at the metadata, they actually have codes and numbers for like the paper, the stock, and all of that. And it is so complex. But yes. And it is all in SAP. And I don't know if you're familiar, if you've used SAP in your life. If you will, eventually, I apologize ahead of time. I'm sorry if you're going to use SAP because it is not pretty. It is not easy to use, but it is extremely powerful. Anyway, so yeah. I don't know if that's a good answer. Anyway, Mina.
Next
Okay.
question.
So
Yeah.
siguro last question na to end the Q&A portion. So what advice can you give to young writers who have writer's block, and what are some reassurances that you could give to ease out their anxieties felt by writers?
Okay. So I happened to be thinking about tech and AI while Honey was speaking, and based on your questions. So my advice to writers is actually it's okay to take it slow, to practice for things to not be perfect. I think the whole obsession or fixation on how uh tech can help us write is about, it's not so much about the art of it and making something great or something that we love, but something that can be seen as perfect. And I'm sorry that's not gonna be the case. You know, again, you mentioned having been on Wattpad before. If you're reading on Archive of Our Own, if you're reading on webtoons, the things that people love are so raw and so are so raw and so personal and not at all perfect, but the sincerity of the people creating it just uh shines through. So as a writer, that to me is probably the thing that I will say to reassure anybody else who's worried that they're not perfect yet. It's okay. You're in the best, you're in the best position actually to start discovering the thing that you want to discover. So if you're blocked, just take a break, watch a movie, go out, touch some grass, as they say, and just find things that inspire you, and because that's where all art comes from, and it's not gonna come from, oddly enough, you know, you could actually play a game and watch something that enabled by tech, but what you create, what unblocks you is going to be based on your own, based on your own fighting through it or just relaxing yourself through it, and it's not going to be handed to us by an app or a machine just yet, I think.
Okay. Alright. Ayan, so thank you, Miss Mina and Miss Honey. I think those questions are the questions that we can answer within our time. So actually po, ang dami pa pong questions na pumasok sa Slido, but ayan, given the time constraints, maybe we'll just email the questions na lang, and okay. Ayan po. So thank you very much to all of you who sent them, and let's end the Q&A portion here.
So ayun po, once again, thank you so much for those insights, and Again, if you have any additional questions, feel free to send them in the chat box or in the Slido link, and we will relay them to our speakers after the program. So at this point of our event, we would like to take a moment to show our appreciation to our speakers on behalf of the entire organizing committee. Now let us call on our speakers as we provide them with our certificates of appreciation, starting with Mix Honey de Peralta. So, next slide, please. Ayan. This certificate is proudly presented to Mix Honey de Peralta in recognition of her invaluable contribution as a resource speaker for Intra-pahina, a Bangkulálâ policy forum on the impacts of technology on the publishing industry, organized by the University of the Philippines Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga campus, given on this day, December 13, 2024, signed by this forum's project head, yours truly, Fatima Marshall, and Mr. Remy De Leon, our STS1 lecturer. So, ayan, let's take a picture po with Miss Honey. Okay,
Okay, so thank you, Mix Honey.
excuse me, meron ba nag-take ng picture sa tech?
Okay.
Ulitin na lang po.
Ulit na.
1, 2, 3. Ayan.
Okay. All right, so let's go on to another certificate. So, of course, for Mix Mina. So, this certificate is proudly presented to Mina V. Esguerra in recognition for her invaluable contribution as a resource speaker for the Intra-pahina, a Bangkulálâ policy forum on the impacts of technology on the publishing industry, organized by the University of the Philippines Diliman Extension Program in Pampanga, Clark Campus. Given on this day, December 13, 2024, signed by our project head, Fatima Marshall, and Mr. Remy De Leon, our STS1 lecturer. So let's take a picture again. Tech team. So 3, 2, 1. Okay. So thank you so much, speakers.
Once again, thank you so much po. And before we officially end our webinar, may we kindly request everyone po to please open their cameras for a quick photo opportunity. So,
to those who cannot open their cameras, please use the heart react button to let us feel your presence. Okay. So wait lang natin sila mag-open ng cam. Okay. All right, so let's take a picture in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, isa pa?
next page po.
Okay, next page. Okay na.
Next page po ulit. Okay. Ayan. So that concludes our forum. Once again, our deepest gratitude po to our speakers for sharing your time, knowledge, and wisdom with us.
So this event will not be possible without everyone. So huge thanks to everyone who participated in this event and our organizing committee who made this possible. So shout out to RLDMC, Carlos Pineda, LJ Pineda, Val Olivar, Audrey Romena, Alexis Antonio, and Shakira Ledona. Thank you also to our professor, Sir Remy, and the UPDEP Cultural Committee. This event is a huge success because of all our efforts.
So once again, thank you everyone. This is Fatima Marshall.
And this is Angelo Calderon, your host for today's session. We hope you learned a lot from us today and from today's forum, and we wish you a great day.
Thank you po.
Bye-bye. Thank you po.